And we will be also sharing Elaine's PowerPoint after this session, and we will be having this available on our YouTube channel later in case anybody wants to go back and rewatch it. And just a reminder again, for those who have questions, whenever you log in, it automatically lets us know you're there and how many minutes you'll be joining us, which is part of what we have to keep track of for stars. And then at the end of the session, I'll be posting a survey within the chat box that you'll fill out just for today to help give you that stars credit hour. I think that's all I have. Elaine, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Sure. Thanks again to everybody for joining us. And again, if you haven't yet, grab a piece of paper or something close by to write with. I know a lot of times when I attend a virtual workshop, I don't have anything to write with. I'm used to just being able to type along. So math's a little different. Sometimes we need something to write with. So thank you again for taking your evening to talk about math. I love it. And I love that some people are already asking about how to make math fun. I know sometimes it gets a bad rap, and we'll talk about that too. So if you have questions as I'm going through, please feel free to add them to the chat. I'll do my best to keep that monitored, and I know Susan's going to help me some too. There's also a place to have Q&A. So if you have some questions that you want addressed either in real time or before we get done, Susan will be the specialist on your STARS hours and certifications. So she should be able to help you with that. And I'll do my best to help you with any math questions. So we'll go through our little agenda here. Again, if you want the tiny URL at the bottom, tinyurl.com/SEC for secondary tutoring 2, the number 2. That will pull up these same slides so that you have them as a resource. And I will put that at the end of all these slides as well to remind you. So again, we're going to go through some tutoring strategies for secondary learners. A lot of times our secondary learners have some deficit for elementary school basics also. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But kind of the rollout for the evening. So I just want to introduce myself. Again, I'm Elaine Schwing. How I came here is I started teaching math at Morgantown High School. I taught there for 7 years. And then I went to West Virginia University and worked for the WVU Teach program. And that program helps to certify students in secondary math and science. So I got to visit a lot of classrooms, visit a lot of schools, watch a lot of students teach, and learn from a lot of great colleagues. And my passion really lies with teenagers and at the high school setting. And so I just made a job transition in January to work at the Board of Child Cares. And so I'm teaching grades 6 through 12 there. And so far it's really fun and exciting. And if you've never heard of it like I hadn't before I found the job, it's part of the institutional education program. So my students live on campus and then come to school there. So it's a great place to be for me right now. My email is there. So if you have questions or resources that you'd like, or just want to talk about things, I'll also add that to the last slide also so you have it later. But I also have just tutored a lot. Math is one of those things that people often want some extra help and support or encouragement in. And so I've had the privilege of getting to work with a lot of students one-on-one tutoring, but I also had a class period at Morgantown High where I would just help students with math one-on-one. So it was really cool to get to learn from a lot of students that way and see a lot of different techniques from different teachers. So hopefully I can share some of that all with you. So I also, this is new to me. I know this is the first time they're running these webinars. And so I really wasn't sure what experience levels would be coming in, what your comfort level is with math, the level of students that you're working with. And so I've just kind of come up with some different strategies, things that might help so that you just have different ideas. Sometimes I feel like just having an idea, think about it as building up your toolkit. And so we're going to try to really build up our toolkit tonight so that you have some ideas. I hope something resonates with you. And if you want to hear more about anything, just let me know. So again, sometimes math doesn't always have the best reaction when I tell people that I'm a math teacher or that I love math. Sometimes I see this face. And so I know sometimes our students feel that way too. And so I wanted to start off the night just saying that if that's either the way that you have felt, or if you're working with a student that feels that way, the best thing we can do is really just try to encourage these students. So if they're saying, I don't know how to do this, try to encourage them. You don't know it yet, but you can know it. And so just really find ways to encourage their growth. A lot of times I think math can just feel a little defeating for our learners. And so trying really hard to celebrate whatever victories we can find, seeing that they're working hard. Oh, I see that you're working, or I see that you did this part right. Now let's work on the next part. So just trying to be open-minded to what they're doing. There are always a lot of ways to solve math problems. It's one of the things that I love about it, but I know it's one of the things that can also be a little tricky. So if you ask students kind of what they've already done or what they've tried to start a conversation, we can kind of move from there. So always asking them some open-ended questions to start, ask where they're at. What have you tried so far? Those kind of things can help our conversations flow in productive ways. Again, just trying to be encouraging and supportive of their learning. So again, just kind of thinking about those open-ended questions, trying to have them make sure they do the problem. Sometimes they just want to put their pencil down and have someone else do it. And so disengage when you can, because sometimes we'll help them with one problem and then we just kind of need to walk away. And so then we can see where they're getting stuck the next time. They can become really dependent quickly on us if we'll be able to sit there with them. And it's hard for us as people helping them as well, just to be able to have enough time to help all of our learners. So more specific things to math that I would like to talk to you about is starting off with this number sense and operations. Again, a lot of times for even middle school and high school students, they have deficits in really basic math concepts that are affecting their ability to learn the higher level concepts. They can get the bigger concepts, but they can't do the calculations. And so thinking about those strategies, just number facts, just subtracting and adding. So sometimes, a lot of times students will struggle, especially with integers, with negative numbers. And so just quickly jotting a number line can help students see what direction they're working in. And so you can see my little scribbles there of a number line you could sort out and help students see that if we're at -3 and we want to go farther to, I'm sorry, I actually wrote it as -2 minus 3 on my number line there, we get -5. And so it's one way is drawing a quick number line. Another way is to relate to real world contexts. And so the two that tend to always be good go-tos when we're talking about positive and negative numbers is football and money. Most of our students can relate to that. And so if we have -3 yards on one play and then we have another play and we lose 2 more yards, then we've lost 5 yards. Or if you borrow $3 from a friend and then the next day you borrow 2 more, well, now you owe them $5. So a lot of times these negative and positive numbers can be hard abstractly, but if we can kind of put a context to it, it helps. That brings us also to this 2 negatives make a positive, which can be a little tricky because that's true when they're right next to each other, but not always true like in our last problem. So oftentimes if students are doing this 5 minus -2, they do a change and they make it a plus, but kind of helping them think about why that might be true. If you take away something negative, it's like adding to, it's becoming a positive. I have found that scenarios help with that too. So if I have $5 and I was charged a $2 fee from the bank, but then they took it away, it's like getting $2 to my account. Or if there was negative yardage on a play and then they canceled the play, there was a penalty, then they get those yards back. And again, thinking about that friend borrowing money from a friend, you owe him $2, but he said, it's okay, you don't have to pay me back, then that's like making $2. So thinking about those scenarios to help students attach meaning can sometimes be the little thing that they need, because it also gives them some meaning behind why they would need to know it. So often it's, why do we need to learn this? And you're often, I'm sure, on the receiving end of just what they're working on given from somebody else. And so maybe you can help them find some meaning in it. Other little basics that sometimes we don't realize students just don't understand conceptually, don't really know. They might know how to get an answer, but they don't know how they got it or what it means, is just helping them realize if they're struggling with multiplying, well, what is multiplication? It's repeated addition. So we're just going to add this number however many times we're multiplying. So 3 times 2 means we're adding 2 3s. Or I have had so many students, even in honors level high school courses, not know what division means. So dividing is when you're putting things into groups. So sometimes if you can reframe questions, so if we're going to divide 15 by 5, well, how many groups of 5 would be in 15? And even if you find objects nearby and you're able to like sort those into objects with a simple problem, I know if they're dividing bigger numbers, maybe that's harder. But if you do something with smaller numbers for them to conceptualize really what they're doing, it can be a building block for them to work from. A lot of times too, maybe students will know their multiplication tables, but they don't have their division memorized. So if we can change that for them, and if they're struggling with this 15 divided by 5, we can say, well, 15 times what would, or I'm sorry, 5 times what would give us 15? And sometimes they'll be able to connect that. So a lot of times if we can just give multiple representations, multiple ways to think about things and learn things, it can just help our students make that little jump that they need to get moving forward. So to think a little bit more about specific content that might hit our middle school learners, especially, is this proportional reasoning is a huge theme in middle school. It's something that still comes up in secondary and in high school learning, just depending on, again, one of those basics that can become a deficit. So I have a little problem here for us. We have Shavar and Billy, they have candy, and it's in a ratio of 2 to 3. And together they have 25 pieces of candy altogether. And I want us to figure out how many pieces of candy does each boy have. So take a minute, think about how you would solve that problem. If you're not sure, I'm going to give you some different strategies, but think about how you would do it, so then maybe we can discover if there's some different ways. I'll just give you a quiet minute. So I mentioned that one of the things I like about math is there's a lot of different ways to solve problems, and maybe some of you are going to do it even different than some of the ways that I'm going to show you. So there were a few different ways that I thought were popular that might help students. And again, just wanted to give you some different tools. So maybe if students are stuck in one area, if we show them a different way and we've at least seen it before, we can kind of go back to that and help them. So one way to help students with a lot of problems, one of this proportional reasoning or this ratio problem is to draw strip or tape diagrams. They can be called either thing. And so if we have Shavar and Billy with this 2 to 3 ratio, you can see that I've kind of drawn these 2 boxes. I had some difficulty getting ready for this workshop because I'm communicating through the screen. And so I wasn't able to kind of like hand draw it on a piece of paper like you might with a student, but doesn't have to be fancy, just 2 boxes for Shavar and 3 boxes for Billy. And altogether, they're going to have 25 pieces of candy. So if we show this to students, we can look at it and say, well, how many pieces does each boy have? They each have these boxes. So it's a little easier to see that we're going to need to divide that 25 into each box. There are different ways we could do that. We could put tally marks in each one until we use up all 25. If we have a learner who doesn't see that we can divide is another strategy. We can guess and see if we can fill in the boxes and see if we put the same number in all of them, if it works. So if you put 5 in each one of these boxes, we would use up all 25, and it would show us that Shavar has 10 pieces and Billy has 15. And so just having that picture can often help us understand that question a little better. I don't always gravitate right away. I don't always think in pictures, but I think it really helps our students if there's a way to draw a picture or to draw a representation of these things. Another way is that you could write a little equation for this. We know 2 times something is going to give us Shavar's candy, and we know 3 times something is going to give us Billy's candy. So if we add that together, we should get 25. This might be a little bit more of an advanced idea, more algebra for students. So 3x plus 2x is going to give us 5x, and then we can divide and still get x equals 5. Problem is that sometimes students want to quit there, and we want to know how many pieces each boy has. So we have to say 2 times x with Shavar, or 10, and 3 times x or 3 times 5 was our 15. So there's 2 strategies. There's still a few more. One other way is we can think about setting up a fraction as like a part to a whole. So if we have 2 to 3, the whole would be 5 altogether. And at first I set up this problem just to kind of look at how many Shavar had. So he had 2 and the whole would be 5. And we know that has to equal the total number of pieces we have, which is 25. So if you do this method, you want to make sure that you have a simplified fraction for our 2/5. And then you look at what I'll call the ratio or like the scale factor. What do you multiply 5 by to get 25? Well, we multiply by 5. So whatever you want to keep the fraction balanced, you can do the same thing with the 2. So 2 times 5 would give us 10. We could do the same thing for Billy to find out that 3 times 5 is 15. Again, just another strategy, still fractions, still that proportional reasoning, just another way that we can solve it. I find a lot of times on these problems, if students are really stuck and don't know where to start, just ask them to guess a number that they think is too high. Ask them to guess a number that they think is too low. Try, guess, and check. It's somewhere to start. And so if students give you a number that's too low, well, 1 may be for Shavar and a number too high is 20. Okay, well, let's pick a number between that. So it can at least give us a starting point and get students working in the right direction. And that can apply to any problem, but this problem especially. So just a little kind of written out logic about how we could talk to Billy and Shavar, or talk to a student about Billy and Shavar. Maybe they would think, well, you know, Shavar has less than half the pieces. So let me just guess 8. I don't know. So then if it was 8 and he has 2 parts of it, that would be like a scale factor of 4. 4 and 4 would give us 8. So that would mean Billy has 12 pieces because 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. Well, that would only be 20 pieces total, and that's too small. So let's try another one. Let's try 10 now. And so that will end up working so that Shavar has 10 pieces and Billy has 15, and it works. So sometimes just really simply just guessing a number and reasoning our way from there can help students. And it's good mathematics, logical. And if sometimes we think there has to be a concrete process or like procedures, but getting that reasoning down is what they need. So here's just another example again of how, you know, even if they pick something as big as 10 and said, all right, Shavar has 20 pieces, Billy has 30 pieces, we can see that's too big. And so they can kind of say, well, that's 2 times too many, so let's make it half. There's different ways they can guess and check and still arrive at the same answer. Again, if at any point, if I'm going too fast or you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A or the chat. I do have the chat up so I can just respond. I know it's tricky when you can't go off on mute and ask some things, but I welcome your questions if you have them. So now thinking a little bit more about algebra specifically, really simple things that really help students is just using different colors. And so I really try to think of things that would be within our reach. That could be a highlighter, that could be a crayon, that could be a colored pencil, that could be a mark, whatever it is. So if students are working with algebra, I gave some examples of combining like terms, just circling the ones that go together. We want terms that have the same letter and the same exponent, and they can be combined together. So on the problem on the left, we've got x squared and the negative 2x that can combine to negative 1x squared. We can circle them, we can draw lines that go together to give us that. Whatever's going to help the students kind of make that connection that they're going to combine. But I found that colors can really help them with that. And again, like the 5x and the 3x can give you 8x. If you don't have other colors, even if you maybe put triangles around some and circles around the other, underline some and circle others. A key with that though is making sure that the students keep the sign in front of the number. So we have to make sure that we know that 2 is a negative 2. The colors have also really helped students with distributive property. So just showing that that 3 is being multiplied by both the 4x and the negative 5. And so trying to help students see that relationship between getting our 12x and negative 15. A lot of times our students want to do it in the least amount of steps. And so if it helps them often to see it written out as well. And so maybe that's another way that, we can show them, write these steps, and encourage them to do that so that they can find their mistakes and they can find some success writing things out this way. Takes a little more time, but it works out in the end. So just using different colors. There's lots of other problems you could use different colors on, but those are a few that stand out to me as might be quick, helpful. So one other thing I thought about is that a lot of times our students have trouble solving equations. And so even just grabbing nearby objects to kind of represent this in a hands-on way can help students. So I just grabbed one Post-it and two objects to represent this equation, and I ripped up my Post-it in different pieces. And so I kind of showed you a little equation of 2x, those are my pencils, my 2 x's, my 5 pieces of paper, and then I put an equal sign and I put it equal, there's 7 other pieces of paper. So I want to know how much those pencils, how many pieces of paper those pencils are worth. So I kind of drew out this or captured this process. I took away an equal amount from each side, took away the 5 scraps of paper from the left, and I took away 5 scraps of paper from the right. And so altogether, I've just got 1 scrap of paper left for each pencil. Maybe those are different, that could work for all different equations. If you end up with fractional answers, you're going to end up with a piece of paper that needs to be split in more pieces. And that can help students understand this idea of a remainder and fractional relationships and what that means. So I wouldn't steer away from it if it's not a whole answer, but just again, like a physical way that students can kind of interact with these equations so that it might sink in a little bit more and just be shown a different way. I mentioned strip or tape diagrams before, and so wanted to show you that it can also apply to solving equations. So if we have 2x plus 5, and see the picture all the way to the left is going to represent that, and the whole thing is worth a value of 7. And so if I take away 5 from my picture and I take away 5 from my whole, then I end up with those 2 x's equaling 2. I have the equations at the bottom, but then we can see again that the x is going to equal 1. So another way to kind of use those boxes of visual representation to show how these equations are solved. And then one other kind of thing for solving equations, I've heard some people use this and sometimes our students connect with kind of something relatable. And so a lot of times in solving equations, talk about like moving the thing that's least attached or doing reverse PEMDAS or something like that. And sometimes students don't always understand why you do it in one order and then you do it in another order on a different time. And so this analogy of kind of using your socks and shoes, when you get ready for the day, you put on your socks and then you put on your shoes. But at the end of the day, you take off your shoes and then you take off your socks. It's the opposite order. So the same is true for when we're solving equations. When this equation was set up with order of operations, the 3 times the x plus the 1 is kind of our order of operations, but we're going to have to work with it in a reverse way. So we have to remove the 1 and then we have to divide by 3. Never know what will help certain students, so kind of having a little analogy in your back pocket can sometimes help. So another important skill to algebra, and honestly connects to geometry as well, because students are going to be graphing, is plotting those points. And so I have found that students are more engaged when we can give them hands-on materials. You can see that I graphed these points with some Skittles that I had nearby. So this could work with Skittles or M&Ms, or it could work with bingo chips or pennies or anything. You can certainly still graph points with just a paper and a pencil, but just to mix things up a little bit, sometimes it's fun to do things hands-on. So our ordered pairs are going to be always in the alphabetical order, X, comma, Y. And we're plotting these points on a coordinate plane. So we can go over 2, up 1, put a Skittle there. And for the next one, we can go left 4 and up 2 and put a Skittle there. And we can go left 3 and down 2. And so all different ways that we can kind of represent some things. I will absolutely be able to go back and see these slides. So If you have any questions or you missed something, if I'm going too fast, again, you can always let me know in the chat if you want to go back to anything. But I will give you the link to these slides so that you can have them as a reference. And Susan will also be emailing this out at the end. So graphing is often a common topic in algebra as well. And that starts in middle school and can go, because it's an 8th grade standard too. So just depending on the level of learner and where they're at. But again, hands-on, I find that that's really engaging for students, or makes it a little bit more fun than just a normal worksheet, is getting them to graph using something physical. So a pipe cleaner works really well. I have a wiki stick picture there, if you're familiar with those, or a piece of string. Anything can really work. And so if you have an empty grid, that could be something that you draw hand. It doesn't have to be one that's printed like this one in the picture is, but if we wanted to graph y equals 2x plus 3, there are a lot of different ways that you can graph it. One is that it's going to start at that plus 3. So that 3 is like our y-intercept, if that sounds familiar. And then we can go up 2 over 1. So from that point at 3, we can go up 2 over 1, up 2 to the right 1, over and over again to graph our line. Also gave a little example of, you can always, if you're not sure how to graph, don't remember, students don't, whatever they're struggling with, we can always check our answer, or we can always graph by just substituting points in. So we can just pick any number on our number line of x and substitute it in for x. So 2 times -1 plus 3. See what that gives you. If you crunch those numbers and get a student to do that with you, you'd get -1, 1. And so that's 1 point on our line. We can try 0. Well, 2 times 0 is 0 plus 3. Well, that's the ordered pair 0, 3. So I can go to the middle 0 and up 3. Or if I have the value 2 for x, I can say 2 times 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7, and I can go to 2, 7. So there are all different ways. If there's a strategy that the student knows, they can stick with that. If they get stuck, we can always just pick a number, any number. 0 is usually easiest. 1 is usually pretty easy. And you only need 2 points in order to graph a line. So that can help them get started there. And that physical aspect is just so that they can kind of place it. It could also just be an idea, like when they kind of graph a lot of them, sometimes they can just move that piece around in order to graph a lot quickly, just for practice, if it's something that they're not having to like turn in for school, since the stick doesn't always stay on the page in the right spot. But once they plot it with a pipe cleaner or a wiki stick, they can always kind of trace that line and have it recorded as well. There are some other things that would just be general ideas that might help any kind of learner, and I also have some resources to share with you all that might help too. So if you have a student who's just feeling overwhelmed, if they have like a lot of problems to do, Post-its can be a really great friend. I guess even just paper with some tape if Post-its aren't even nearby, but it's a way that you can kind of chunk the worksheet into smaller parts, or a lot of problems into smaller parts. And so kind of using the Post-its to cover up the page, and then as they get through a few problems, take the Post-it off and do the next couple problems. Helps them not become too overwhelmed. It also, it's kind of like when I check things off on my to-do list. I feel really accomplished when I check one little thing off. And so it's like them checking off every time they get to take that Post-it off. Well, I've done these 3, check, take off another Post-it. Do these ones, take off another Post-it. It's really simple, but it can really help students that are just feeling a little defeated or getting overwhelmed. Just try these 3. Okay, let's go on to these 3. Virtual, maybe just zooming into some problems or covering things. I thought about maybe opening another screen, like opening a Word document to cover up part of the screen so that they can only see a few problems at a time, if that's something, if they have like a digital worksheet. A lot of times, if we're able to rephrase questions just to be really open-ended instead of yes and no, we can help figure out where students are having some difficulties and also get them to just kind of like, sometimes they can find their own mistakes if they talk it out. So if we work with a student and we have a problem with them, you know, I work with them and then I ask them, okay, does that make sense? Or do you understand? A lot of times they'll just say yes, because that's easy, or because they don't want to say no. Even if they say no, that doesn't tell us a whole lot about what they're struggling with. So instead, can you go back over the steps that we did? Can you explain to me how you solved that? Why did we do that? Why does that make sense? So asking some open-ended questions in summary or as you're going along can help you keep that math dialogue going. And again, I brought up some of this, but I think really connecting to real life scenarios. I work with a population of students right now that have some just understanding gaps. But if I can connect it to real world, it like suddenly makes sense. So students understand money on graphs. We can relate it to speed and time. They understand, again, those football analogies, whatever it is that might help them connect with it, can help them see the relevance in it, but also just help them make sense of the problem. If it's just, you know, a paper pencil worksheet with problems on it, it can help it kind of bring it to life a little bit more. So I wanted to show you all a few of these websites just in case you hadn't seen them before, and they might be really good resources as you're moving forward. I know nothing is more frustrating than when you can't solve a problem and you just need to know where to go. And so Wolfram Alpha is like probably the #1 thing I would say if you need to help a student. Let me pull it up and show you real quickly. If I can get to it, I pulled it up, but my taskbar is getting in the way. So 1 second for me. Okay, so make sure you can still see this. Yeah, okay. So Wolfram Alpha is got a lot of different things that you could look at on here as a resource. But one thing you might, let's say I just want to solve the equation 2x minus 3 equals 8. I don't know. Let me plug that in search. It's going to pull up the equation. It's going to show me the graph of what that looks like. It's going to show me different ways that I could write it. So alternative forms are actually kind of some of the steps in us solving that equation. It also gives me the solution. This is something that a lot of students know about. So a lot of times I know that they use that to help them. But I think it can be a really good resource for us because sometimes you just get stuck on a problem and you're not sure. So that's just an example of one, like solving an equation. You can honestly type in a lot of different things. If there's a ratios or something, if there's something on a student's paper and you're not sure, or we're just stuck, there's all different things that you can just type in. Oh, it connects to fractions. Okay, tell me more about that. So it's just a good resource. Again, Wolfram Alpha is that one. I won't bother showing you all the different video tutorials. Perhaps you're aware already of Khan Academy. It's pretty popular, but sometimes we don't have time to watch all of those. But there are a few other Math Antics and Mario's Math Tutoring that seem to be able to explain things in a simple way. So if we can get students, or if we need a quick refresher in a moment, it's there. Math is fun. I have found is really helpful for math vocabulary. And sometimes that's a big challenge, is just understanding what the question's asking or what vocabulary is used. And so if you go to Math is Fun, I had looked at it to look at a specific example, but you'll kind of go there and you'll see all these different things. The dictionary I find helpful, but you can search any topic, it'll help. There'll be worksheets there if you need some extra practice for someone. But the dictionary is a visual dictionary as well. So if I just want to see what they have for the term variable, that's what I was on earlier. It shows you what a coefficient is, what the operator is, what the variable is, what the constants are. So just some vocabulary there, and it's got a picture, it's got examples. So just another helpful tool. And the last one I want to show you is Desmos.com. And Desmos.com has a graphing calculator. It's got a lot of different math tools. You don't need an account to join, although students can do activities, and it's free to actually have like a teacher account and set up students with activities, and they're really great educational, can really help students understand concepts and have fun while doing it. But they're all different practice tests, calculators, graphing calculators. I found that the graphing calculator is very easy to use. So in the same way, if students are graphing lines and we're not sure, or they need some help, just type in y equals 2x plus 7. Oh, it graphed it for me. You know, you can move your lines around sometimes, do different things to kind of check them out and see all different ways they can explore on this. So it's pretty easy and intuitive to just type. There's not a lot of math type required, but there are different settings you could change if you needed to. But those websites tend to be pretty helpful. Resources for statistics and financial algebra. Yeah, let me think. I love statistics. It's actually my favorite. I think it's so important. Financial algebra resources. Let me think about it. I might be able to email you later, Laura Beth, if I think a little bit longer. It's a really great question because I think it's really important. And I would love to talk statistics with anyone. It's always been my favorite thing just because I think it's so relevant. So depending on the area of statistics, graphing calculators often help with a lot of the calculations on that. And there might be some things on Desmos that would help in terms of just calculations. In terms of actual tutorials, or I'll have to look. So I'll poke around a little bit and get back to you for sure. So those are kind of the other supplemental materials. Just some quick things. Again, I don't want to overwhelm anyone, but I also know that math is just like really broad. So to say like do anything on math is a lot. And so I did want to ask if I don't have any questions. I don't think that were specific to the topics. A good reference to calculus and trig. The resources like Wolfram Alpha and Desmos, any of those they will graph things for calculus. So for calculus or trig, if you want to graph trig functions, it will graph that immediately. It will, so you could, you know, find different values at different important points. There's also, I believe, the unit circle that you can find on here. For calculus, there's integrals that students can graph so they can find the area under the curve of different functions. I have to remember exactly how they type it in there. Oh, with this calculator at the bottom, sorry, this keyboard at the bottom. So you're going to find some other math symbols here. And so I actually had students today finding out that they could find area under curves and do some calculus on this. So there are all different options. There's also some stats functions in here. So that might actually help Laura Beth's question about statistics. So there's some other calculations and things in here that you could use. So Desmos might be a good resource. If you are looking to like kind of teach students from scratch, I could show you on Desmos also. Let me see if I'm signed in. There's a teacher dashboard that you can look at activities, and you can, it's free. Students can, a lot of them are exploratory and some of them are practice. So it might be like you're graphing equations to land a plane, or different things that are a little bit more fun and interactive. But they're all different ones that you could explore on Desmos as well. Not sure if that helps answer your, so the PowerPoint, one more question I have is how to get the PowerPoint. So let me pull up my last slide here. So feel free to contact me if you want to jot down my email, especially some of you that had questions that maybe I didn't answer. So if you want more calculus resources or trig resources or stats, I really wasn't anticipating having higher level math. So I'm sorry that I wasn't extra prepared for those higher level things. And so the PowerPoint is at this tinyurl.com/SEC tutoring #2. And Susan is also going to email out the PowerPoint to everyone after, but you can have access right now through that link. So if there's anything you want to go back and look at immediately, again, my email will be in that. So if you don't want to, you know, If you don't want to jot it down right now, just honestly email me. Again, I'm happy to talk about math anytime. So I can give you whatever resources I have. For any other questions on the floor at this point? I know I left some time at the end here so I could answer some specific questions if we have them. If anybody wants to, hang behind and ask anything specific, I'd be happy to talk more. And Susan, is there other things we need to wrap up with their hours and their survey?
Absolutely. Elaine, thank you so much for those great examples from a mom who also has a son in high school. I was telling Elaine earlier, we're in geometry right now. So those are some great resources. And I really loved seeing your examples of the hands-on strategies, because whenever you think about like using those manipulatives with younger kids, it was the same concept, right? With those pencils and Post-it notes. That was so helpful. So I'll have to rethink that. Everybody, I just put the link for the Qualtrics survey in the chat. We would love for everybody to fill that out. It's just going to take you like 2 minutes. We did get some funding to host these trainings through the Benedum Foundation, and we want to be able to report back on what people learned, as well as, other recommendations for additional training or other opportunities in this type of format. Oh, and thank you guys. You're just mentioning I only sent it to the participants, not the participants and the attendees. So I will stick that in the chat again. There you go. So everybody should be able to see that. But especially if you need your STARS hours, we definitely have to have you fill that out, because that's where we're going to collect your number and be able later to disseminate those hours. And we are in the process of working on that. I know that we've had some questions about like, when are those going to be coming? And we're doing quite a bit of trainings with a lot of people. So it's going to take us a little while to get through that. But do we have any more questions for Elaine? And I can also make a little plug that she's going to be joining us next Tuesday at 6 o'clock as well for another session on elementary math tutoring and working with elementary students. So we hope that a lot of you can join us next Tuesday.
Thanks again for attending. And if you have any questions, really just email me. I'd be happy to give you some more resources. So thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.